Like,
All
Are we
right,
going live on
guys.
that?
Well, yep, we are live now. Wanted to say welcome, ladies and gentlemen, non-binary friends, anybody watching out there with us. We're joining today for the panel, Who's Really in Charge Here? We're going to be looking at character-driven versus plot-driven storytelling and how each of you guys come in to assess which method may be better for your personal writing style or how you handle those. I want to go ahead and give everybody a chance to introduce themselves today. We've got some really star-studded panelists here that are going to be joining us. Evan, why don't you go ahead and start us off? Give us a little bit about yourself. Tell us something that you've got coming down the pipeline or what you have working on right now.
Yeah, great. My name is Evan Klein. Relatively unknown. I do have one series completed. I just finished several months back. The Immersion Online series was 4 books. I was kind of happy to finish that. I am working on a new series now. Just so you know, I kind of came up with the idea before the reboot came out. I kind of had this lit RPG idea where a character's it's almost like a quantum leap thing. He's kind of leaping from sort of like one lit RPG world to another, to another, to another, to another. I know the TV show just got rebooted, so I came up with the idea before that came out there. It's weird because like kind of each new world he kind of goes to, there's all like it's a new system. Well, so I'm coming up with these crazy systems for each of these new different worlds. So it's kind of, and then there's one standard one. So I'm kind of working on that now. I am approaching it a little differently. I'm trying to finish the whole series first before I put anything out. I kind of struggled a little bit, kind of putting out separate books and then trying to go back with continuity and everything like that. So I'm trying to write the whole thing at once. We'll see how that works. That works out. So I'm not expecting anything out new till the spring. I do have something up on Royal Road, kind of just a fun little project. 27 chapters up so far with a female main character. She's kind of just this you gotta just kind of read it. She's just she's a little out there. So that's what I'm kind of working on these days. And thank you again. I'm looking forward to this panel. And looking forward to hearing from everybody.
Very cool. Dakota, why don't you go next for us?
Sure. Hey guys, I'm Dakota Kraut. I am a author in lit RPG, gamelit, all sorts of fun stuff there. I own and operate Mountain Dew Press and put out the content of some super elite authors, which is really cool. And yeah, I mean, that's about it.
Perfect.
I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah, right.
that's
yeah, really underplaying your role.
Yeah, right.
You guys are great.
Because
That's
of that
all right.
guy, I'm published.
Yeah.
And I know how many books, Dakota? How many books you have out now?
Like 38, something like that. I'm gonna
Just a few.
only
by
No-
next
no
year
big
it should
deal.
be 50.
Only 38.
So,
Like 50. Wow.
Yeah.
next year, yeah. I have a whole bunch I'm sitting on waiting to publish just because I don't want to blow away other people's releases. So
Wow.
yeah, that's good
Thank you.
stuff.
Very cool.
very
Yeah.
good.
All right. Well, Jay, how
Okay.
about you take us to the next one there?
Hi, I'm Jay Boyce. I write the Touch of Power series, which is published through Mountain Dale Press, and I also write Lotus Lake series, Rise of the Mystic Mage, and I'm writing book 2 of that right now. So yeah, that's me. I am possibly experiencing some technical difficulties because it's storming here, and apparently my internet doesn't like that. So if I pop out, I apologize.
Yeah, stay safe.
No worries. Yeah, definitely stay safe. Well, don't if we need to make up for something. I'm sure we can find a way to do that. All right, Sean, why don't you finish us off there?
All right, hey guys, I'm Sean Fletcher. I write young adult fantasy and middle grade fantasy. Middle grade is just kind of a term for tweens, 9 to 14.
Nice.
And so I've got a few series out. Probably my most popular is the Heir of Dragons series. So that's Dragon Shifters. Then I've got Paranormal Outcasts, the Darkness Within series, Mage's Apprentice. I do primarily contemporary fantasy, so that's fantasy in the real world. I just like taking what we know in our real world and just throwing some magic into it. My latest series I'm working on is another Dragon Shifter series that's currently coming out. And then I'm working on a new series that I'm kind of coming up with like the marketing for it. But right now I'm calling it like The Cruel Prince, which is a very popular YA fantasy. The Cruel Prince meets Princess Mononoke. I don't know if anybody has ever watched Miyazaki movies. I absolutely love those. And so I'm trying to kind of create something that's just a lot of fun along that. Like I said, I also write middle grade fantasy. So I currently have a couple books out at Agents. Shop around for that. So fingers crossed. I'm glad to be here.
Good luck.
Very cool.
Thanks.
Just want to take one moment to do a little housekeeping. We're all, since we're on Facebook Live, anytime you want to put in your questions, type those out. We'll see if we can get to those while we're going through this. Let these guys talk on the subjects as well at the same time. And since we're using StreamYard, there is a link you can go to make sure that your name and profile picture are showing up, so we know who you are. We can give you a shout out if somebody wants to. If you go to that link that Geneva's put up there and just give it permission to access your name and profile picture, we'll know exactly who's asking the questions and who we're talking to. So, talking about these character-driven versus plot-driven styles of writing, does anybody want to talk about how, or get us started with how they maybe figured out which style of writing they used or leaned towards, and maybe what some of the advantages or disadvantages they found in using that particular style of writing?
I'll go.
All right, Jay.
So I definitely do character-driven stories because I write slice of life, and they are characters in my head, and they don't always do what I think they're going to do.
Never do.
I have been derailed multiple times throughout my series that I was thinking it was going one way, and the character's like, no, I'm not doing that. And I had to go somewhere else with it. So I am one of those little crazy people where the characters live in my head, and I kind of just write down their journey best I can.
I'm pretty similar. The most exciting parts of books for me are always kind of how characters react, and kind of that's what's always drawn me to books. And especially I take the approach of the genre will determine a lot of kind of how, whether or not you're going to do more character or plot. So for instance, in something like a thriller, you can probably get away with a much more plot heavy versus like with very low amounts of character. That's not to say there's no character building or anything, but you have like James Bond, who his character doesn't really change. It's very plot centric, that sort of thing. Whereas with fantasy, with young adult fantasy, that sort of thing, it's very much like they're drawn to the characters. And I just find them the most fun. Taking characters and then putting them through hell is a lot of fun for me.
I agree. I know. I just, it's interesting because I was kind of thinking, what am I going to say for this panel? This question of character driven, and I write in the novel the series I just finished is first person, and by its nature, it's going to be character driven. It's a lot of that internal sort of monologue. Interestingly, I was saying before, I was working on this Royal Road story, and I wrote this chapter. I'm like, all right, what would my character do here? And my character did something which I wasn't expecting, and now I don't know where to go. Like, she left me like in a situation like I don't know how to proceed now. I almost want to like rewrite the whole chapter so I can kind of go along. But why the hell did she do that now? Like, now I'm stuck, so I got to kind of figure out where to go next. So like you said, like Jay said, like you don't really know where your characters sometimes are leading you. Kind of just go along with the ride, and then how they influence the world also, and around them.
What you, Dakota? I've sat in quite a few panels with you talking before. You strike me as the kind of person who has everything really just plotted out and ready to go, and these characters are not going to rule my life, kind of thing.
So that's kind of the thing, right? So I don't like. I feel bad because I guess I'm the only one on the panel doing this. I'm not trying to.
No, we need the other side, Dakota.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So let's see if I can do this real quick. There it goes. All right. Here's the thing. There are a finite amount of personality types, right? Now, what you guys have going for you, and what I'm hearing, the really cool part, the thing that makes sets your stuff out and makes it work for you, is that you have a deep and intrinsic understanding of all of these different personality types. I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, you three feel like you really understand people well. Like, you can just walk up and talk to someone and feel like you're like, I get this person. I really understand their motivations, all their stuff, right? Would you say
usually until I stick my foot in my mouth? But yes.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
But okay, so that's one of the because I've been having this conversation with so many people for so long, right? There are so many people that have this thing where they say, hey, I don't actually understand my characters. They kind of do what they want. And in reality, it's just that you understand your character, you understand personalities and you understand people so well that you understand that your characters would not act in the way that you are trying to make them act. Okay. So you're like, hey, I'm writing this person. This person has this type of personality. This is how they should be reacting, and they're not. And they're going off the rails doing this other thing. It's because your unconscious says, hey, I know what this personality type reacts like. Right. And so that's kind of the thing. Like you just have a really deep understanding. For people like me who don't have that super deep understanding of like, how should this person over here be reacting to this? Like, I am so constantly surprised, like in real life, when I'm talking to someone, I'm like, hey man, how you doing? And they're like, ugh, life. Let me tell you of the darkness that I am in. I'm like, oh my God, I was not expecting the conversation to go this way, you know? So like I had to like plan for that sort of thing. I had to be like, hey, when I'm writing a character, I need to like set up a full personality model for them, how they act, how they react, like when there's positives, when there's negatives, all these other things. That's what all these, if you can see like the arrows and stuff, like that's like how this person reacts in a positive way goes over here. How they react in a negative way comes down the line over here, right? And so they're like, if you're following these like personality charts online, you can actually see how they should react, like depending on how healthy they are, or like the levels of health, their mental health, which literally, I mean, in what we write, it literally says, here's their level of mental health. And I'm like, I understand the levels. I can do this. And so then like I pick the level that they're at and then like just like follow that. And so so for me, like plotting, it's not just like writing out an outline and like running down the railroad. It's plotting means everything, right? It's like I need to understand how my characters are going to react, because if I throw them into a situation where they're going to disintegrate into a puddle and they're just going to be like crying on the floor, that's probably not what the main character should be doing in my books, right? And so like I need to like plot out like, who is the type of person that can go through this situation without like destroying the world, burning the world down around them, or all this other stuff. So that's kind of where my difference is. So character driven versus plot driven, it's all really the same. It's just kind of how you codify it and how you look at it, and like kind of what your own strengths are, right? My strengths are not clearly understanding people. I'm way better at it now because I've been reading on this stuff for years now. Like, yeah, psychology, right? But that's where I'm coming from. Okay,
Right.
I
We
do love
definitely
your
want to say that
personality, Halo.
thank
that
you.
is an amazing. Yeah,
Feels
we
nice.
yeah, we definitely want to say that there's no right or wrong when it comes to
Right.
plot driven versus character driven. It's all about, as Dakota said, knowing yourselves, knowing what your strength is going to be for that.
I have an add-on to this. There's an analogy that I really enjoy because it pretty much perfectly describes my writing. Is if you are in a valley full of fog, you are on one side and you can see the other side, and you can maybe see a few trees along the way. And so what you do is you head down into that fog and you head for that first tree. And once you get to that first tree, you're kind of going to the next tree and the next tree. So like I know the end from the beginning. I can see the end, and I can see a few plot points along the way, and I'm just trying to meander my way through that. But you know, I'm the one moving through the mist and the darkness, trying to figure out how we get to that tree. So that's a lot of my things.
That's a good analogy, and I agree with that, and I agree with Dakota as well about the characters. I very much plot out every story, but I do actually leave out a lot of the character arcs because I kind of let the plot and the influence of the plot affect how the characters react to that sort of thing. Because I'm a pretty firm believer that like your character should influence the plot. They should be a catalyst for most, if not all, things in the plot, or at least have some kind of like weight on it. Otherwise, what are they doing there? So I think it's important to kind of have the plot idea and then run with it.
No, of course. Yeah, it's how your character's influencing that world. Obviously, no. When I'm writing stuff out, I'm like, all right, my character just did this. Now, how are the other characters or the villain or the antagonist? How are they responding to what my character just did, and how is it influencing the world and the plot and things like that? I don't plot. I mean, I might kind of have like a general idea, like where I want to get to. With some
You
vague
can see
notes.
the other side.
Yeah, I see I know the end. I always know the end of my stories. I've done that a couple of times. I've been like on the last chapters, or at least I kind of know where they're going. And it's just sort of the journey, right? It's
Yeah.
They say it's the destination, not the journey, or is it the other way around? The journey, not the
No,
destination.
I really like the journey.
However
Not
it
the,
goes.
According to the great prophet Miley Cyrus, it's the climb. So
Oh, okay.
So I guess there's another question then for you guys that since this may be more for the others than Dakota right at the moment, but have you ever had a character who just did something so far out of left field that it changed plot points or maybe even the ending of something you had planned out in the beginning purely because you were letting the character go, the direction they felt like they needed to go?
Yes.
I roll for things,
Oh,
That's amazing,
and that
by
can
the
make
way.
things difficult sometimes because I'm expecting it to
Right.
go one way, and it didn't.
Like that episode of The Big Bang Theory where Sheldon decided to let his life decisions be made by the roll of a d20.
Polyhedral dice. Yeah, okay.
That's absolutely
man.
amazing, actually.
Is that what you
Yeah,
had in your hand there, Dakota? Some dice?
Yeah, man. So like that's a glorious thing that we can do, right? So if we're writing in a book series where our characters can like come back to life, right? So like writing a RPG and they're like, oh, you died, but you'll be back later. You can do some like truly horrific crap to them, like so the roll of the dice and the rules, right? That's what it's all about,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So playing by the rules is the genre, right? And so if you play by the rules and you blow yourself up, and then like the largest piece they can find of you is a fingernail, right? And then you can still come back later. Like you can mess with stuff, and you should, like, because take risks, right? Like as Miss Frizzle would say, like get out there, make mistakes, get messy, take chances, right, and all that fun stuff. Yeah, like make interesting things happen. But yeah, so that has directly changed a lot of the times, like how I'm ending a book, and usually though not from the good guys perspective, but like my bad guys. Like when I don't know if anyone has read the Divine Dungeon series, right? But the Master, right, which was like this big bad evil dude, according to all the lore, was supposed to be like this super dark character, and then I got to him, and I'm like, okay, so what am I gonna do? And then I'm playing like personality type cards, and I'm like, okay, he's gonna be a this thing, and this thing. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's how, and then we had to roll that into the plot, and it was a lot of fun.
Was that
That's
Cthulhu
awesome.
that you just pulled out?
Yeah, it was Cthulhu.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely don't have a sponsorship from them or anything.
No, not at all.
it's
That's
funny
not
when-
the creators.
It's funny when this topic came up, for the panel, I was thinking back to my role playing, experiences from. I'm 55, so from the 80s. All right, I'm talking about 84, 85, and I had this DM, and he was always frustrated. Like he hated playing like the standard modules. He said they were too linear, and the plot, your character really couldn't grow or anything. So he wanted to open this, create this homebrew, this wide open world, like a Skyrim type thing. You just meander wherever you wanted to, and your character could kind of be free to do whatever they wanted to, except he would never actually produce anything because he had these great ideas, but you can't. How does one individual kind of create that whole sort of open sort of world with the characters sort of free to do what they want and interact with the world and affect the world and things like that? You kind of
You're playing in the
sometimes-
sandbox.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
Matt just commented that he can't imagine plotting ahead of time. I kind of agree. That's part of one of the reasons that I love rolling is because it makes it fun for me. I'm basically playing D&D by myself. Like I'm just
I'm gonna
it's
try
fun
that. Take
because
out some dice now.
I'm experiencing this story as well, and so it's fun for me because it's like I get to. So it's surprising for me sometimes what happens, and I'm not expecting it, and I get to go, oh, okay, well, what now?
I'm getting a set of dice on Amazon right after this.
There you go.
I would offer one of mine. I might have like 5,000. I might have a whole 4x4 table full of them.
I think I saw the original box set with some chits in them. So just.
Yeah, so we did have one other interesting question here. Do people write in a fairly linear manner from the front of the book to the end, or is there a preference writing odd chapters and filling in afterwards kind of thing? Do you guys, how do you guys each do that?
Oh, linear, definitely. Like, I know there are some people that they absolutely just like take bits and pieces and like whatever chapter they're inspired by. And I will do that after I'm done with the original draft. Like if I'm like, oh, this chapter needs to be added here or taken away or whatever. But I'm very much like, I know the beginning, maybe know the middle, maybe like know the end. And then I know like different plot points, but they can change through the end. But I do need to know like going forward. That's just how my brain works.
Sure.
I'm scattered. I'm scattered all over the place. So like I write chapters out of order. Like I said, I'll write the last chapter. I'll write. Yeah, I'm working on a series now. I've written like parts of the second and third books. You know, like I finished the first. I have some of the second. I have chapter from the third. So just kind of how my brain works. You know, maybe if that makes any sense.
Sure.
Not really so linear.
I mean, for myself, what I do is what I like to do is I do a really I do basically as quick as I can getting the first draft down, right? So like we're talking, I will like I usually write about a book in 4 weeks, right? And but what I do then is I have like this super bare bones book, right? It's like super bare bones where it's like, okay, here, like I moved from this to this to this to this to this, book is over, right? And now though, I'm like, okay, I know exactly the details of what happens throughout the book, and now I can go back and when like I start back at the front of the book and I start going, and it's like getting a skeleton out, and then first pass I give it all the organs and like maybe some like dermis, but then I'll like no like good features or anything else, and then like a quick follow-up pass like lets me put all my puns in really well, like lets me hit my foreshadowing super nicely. It goes from he pulled out a knife and stabbed him in the neck to yes, as the dagger came like slipped from its sheath, it glint of moonlight hit it and bounced into their face, right? So you can do all sorts of stuff, but what I really like to tell people is that you can't edit a book that isn't done, right? You're just editing chapters, you're editing words, you're editing paragraphs, but you're not editing a book. And if you are doing that, you're editing. I mean, if you just are in an editing death spiral, because that's what it is, right? Oftentimes that book will die, right? It will never see the light of day, because you're going to go through and you're going to realize I'm a better author now than when I was writing this. And so you're going to edit and you're going to be like, okay, I edited that. And then you get to the end of that and you're like, man, I'm better now as an author, as an editor than I was even when I started. And then it just spirals over and over. And then eventually.
And then you'll get really annoyed with yourself. And yeah.
Exactly. And then it just stops being fun. So, another name for perfectionism is insecurity. So just like let the book go. And
see, and that was part of my problem was when I originally started, I started writing when I was 10 years old, and I had this 4-book series planned, and I had the skeleton, and I would do like random scenes. And so I had all of that. And then when I kind of got to the end, I realized I was like, well, all I have is a bunch of scenes. I don't have any character development. I don't have any of that. And so I worked on that for like 20 years on and off. That book series will never see the light of day. It will never see the light of day. When I started writing Siphon, I started it thinking I had this idea in my head, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to start writing it. I'm probably going to be sick of it in a week. Within a month, I had the first book. So I am very much a sequential writer now, linear writer, because that's the only way my brain will work and actually finish the book. So like 99% of my first draft actually makes it into the end draft.
Some of these people wakes up in the middle of the night with like this idea plopping into my head, and it's like, all right, that's going to happen at some point. It just you kind of write it down in the middle of the night, and hopefully you can reach the cycle the next morning.
I keep a sheet of notes of like future plot points and things like that, but like they're just ideas that at some point might come in, and if they don't, then it's not a huge deal.
I think you can't get wedded to those ideas. Like sometimes, like I've come up with the idea, said, "Oh, this is going to be later in the book," and then when I get to them, like it doesn't fit, and you scrap it. You know, you can't just keep it just because it sounded good at 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, and you have to get a drink of water. You know, so
that's an interesting point. So we did have a question here. How often, or does it ever happen, that you might create side characters that move the plot forward and become maybe an important main character later on?
Not super often for me, but I do have quite a few characters that, so like my latest book, actually I did have one character who was like originally just kind of the best friend of the main character, kind of this nerdy person. And just throughout the course of the plot, in the course of the series, I just got more interested in kind of them and how they tied into everything. And so she ends up like getting possessed by an oracle and getting trapped in another plane and becomes like this Merlin whatever. And I had no intention of doing that, but it was just like, oh, this is a lot of fun. Like, why not? Let's do it. I do often sometimes worry about making them more interesting than the main character because you don't want that. But I do think there are quite a few books who, I don't know, I think their strengths are the side characters. And whether that was by intention or not, I don't know. I don't think it really hurts if you have an equally interesting series of characters, be it main or side. But
Yeah, I've got my main character and a main cast of side characters that are the like most recurring side characters, but I haven't really ever had one become another main character. They're just awesome characters who I love and have their own personalities and are doing things in my brain.
And kind of the nice thing about having a main character and having their strengths really well known and documented is that if you get to a point where you're like, I can't progress the story, then you can introduce those side characters, right? Like those side characters come in, and especially if you've talked about them before in the book, like, oh yes, this is my rival, but he just has the right skill set for what I need or whatever it is. If your character can do everything, right? What's the point of reading the book? Like, yeah, they're gonna win. It doesn't matter how they win because they just are going to overpower the bad guy at the end of the book. That's all they're going to do for sure.
It's the plot
You know what I
armor.
mean? Yeah,
it's like that. It's like that anime, like One Punch Man, where like
Yeah.
the interest was like the side characters because you knew he was going to win.
I'm a big fan of the side characters. I mean, like in my series, like I actually dedicate like whole chapters sort of like to that side character sort of backstory and things like that because I just thought it was interesting. And they also serve as a good foil sometimes to your main character. Also, a lot of it's that interaction also between them. So that kind of buddy sort of book also sometimes is nice. That sort of relationship also, just kind of going through it.
Yep, we did have another question for Dakota, but I don't think it's just Dakota that uses this. But
Right.
for those that utilize dice rolls, how do you find the balance for when to roll for outcomes versus driving the plot forward with your own ideas? You have a balance or anything that you try to do when you're rolling those?
I think I'm
I
gonna try
mean,
this.
it's fun to write a bigger book, but the book has to end, right? So, like as much as I'm like, hey, like I'm gonna do all this different stuff, it's he's gonna get there. Like the main character is going to get there at some point, right? It
Has
does.
to make a save and throw. Yep.
Yep. So you just have to make the saving throw, or come at it from a new way, or come at it a better way, or a more interesting way, and then they can usually just progress right forward.
I will say that when I used dice rolls, so in my last fight scene, I did something and I rolled something and I said, okay, all right, I rolled for that and it worked, but I'm going to move it back a little bit because I want the fight scene to not be incredibly boring and end immediately. So I did fudge a little bit because I wanted it to not be boring. The rule of cool is still a thing. Like, dice rolls are great for giving you a direction, but they are not the be all end all.
You don't want to end up with a bunch of critical failures where all your characters died.
Too many times, not too many times.
Just cuts off halfway through the book and the rest of the pages are blank. Like they're all dead.
For sure. We did have somebody else who asked the question, do you ever read somebody else's book and get self-conscious?
Heck
When it goes
yes,
through there.
all the
Nope.
time. I try to balance it. Oh, Dakota, I'm jealous. Oh man, all the
No,
time.
man. Nope. I can tell you why too.
Please do.
Okay, so because what the question is really about is imposter syndrome, right?
Exactly.
No. Okay, so here's the thing. Everyone has imposter syndrome, right? Everyone's gonna be like, hey, what's going on here? I actually have a whole talk on this. It's great. And now, like, of course, as soon as I say it, I blank out on all the things I was gonna say. But no, imposter syndrome is actually do you know what the actual neurological thing is, right? With imposter syndrome. Okay, imposter syndrome is a competitive advantage. Humans are not geared to be successful. We are geared to have a certain amount, meet the requirements, have children, die, right? Not super fun. right? And so our literally one of the things that happens is as we get older, we find less and less enjoyment in things. That's an actual built-in evolutionary neurological trait in humans, right? Where it becomes harder to find joy in things. It is so that we are happier to let others have resources. Okay. It's a weird thing. Okay. So our bodies, therefore, not being ready to have a competitive advantage, or like you say, hey, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop because I shouldn't be doing this well. Right. And so once you realize that, and you can start like taking action against it, and start pushing yourself to realize like, hey, like you are good at what you're doing, and you're doing just fine, you're doing well enough, and that's all you can do, that's all you should do. Oh, we lost.
No,
Okay.
Jay's gone.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
did
but
say there
like
was a storm,
if you are able to like step out and realize like your audience is your audience and their audience is their audience, they have their strengths, you have your own, just roll with it. It's so much easier to just be happy. Like be happy for something, like, hey man, like I'm not jealous of anyone. You know why? Because like let's take a look at Brandon Sanderson and his amazing success.
Oh, yeah.
Does that make me unhappy? No, man. I'm like, wow, look at the things that dude has done that now I'm going to be able to do because they've paved the way. And what can I do where other people are going to be saying that in the future, right? Like, and that's really where I'm sitting on this stuff.
Well, yeah, it's
That's
kind of
interesting.
the 20 books motto is the rising tide lifts all boats.
Mhm.
And
If you're
I
not on a
really
boat, you drown. That's kind of the issue.
that's fair. But like I think one of the things for me is I come at this because I also don't look at that and say, oh my gosh, I should do better, because it's
Mhm.
I'm writing my own book. It's not a race against someone else. It's me. And like
Exactly.
I have a lot of people who tell me like, oh, you should be doing this or this. I had people tell me I shouldn't write a VR because they're like, oh, VRs have been overdone. They have, it was, and I was like, you know what? It was a hubris move for me to do Lotus Lake. Yes, I literally just wanted to do it just to see like how it would do without any marketing whatsoever. I have put 0 cents into marketing that book. But it was also, I just really wanted to write a VR, and people telling me I couldn't do something I was just like, watch me do this. But like reading other people's books, I come at it also from an editor, and I'm like, oh, can I send this to my friends to help them fix things? Which is sometimes really bad.
I always find these other books sort of inspirational. Like I want to aspire to sort of get to that sort of level. I don't see this sort of like, it doesn't make me feel bad. It makes me feel like, oh, I want to get there.
Excited.
I want to
Yeah.
get to those sort of vaulted, levels there, where,
Mhm. Exactly. But yeah, imposter syndrome, don't let it get you down, man. Give it a year. So brain has this fun thing called neuroplasticity, where when you have something for a certain amount of time, which is about a year, when you think in a certain way, when you act in a certain way, your brain will start to act in that way as if it is normal. So
Fake
don't
it
let
till
it
you
get
make
you
it.
down. Well, yeah, in a literal sense, that is what your brain needs, right? If for that kind of success, right? So yeah,
That's
fun
pretty cool.
stuff. Right. I'm glad you like that. It's a product of hundreds of hours of feeling bad about my writing. So don't worry. I've done the research
yeah,
for
yeah,
you.
You're awesome. No.
But that's all gone now. It's all happiness.
We're all good. Very good.
What else you got, Ryan?
Well, I don't have a lot of questions coming at the moment, but I've got another one for you. If to play the devil's advocate, you ever sat on the other side thinking, I really feel like there's a lot of advantages to the other style, or I wish I could do that other style of writing. Whereas, if you're plot driven, feel like you really wish you learned more. Dakota touched on it a little bit more. You guys really know how human interactions work better than maybe he feels like he does. Or been on the other side to think, man, I wish I could do the other style of writing to see how that was for once.
Lotus Lake was not supposed to be a slice of life. I was literally trying to not make a slice of life. I really, really wanted to not do a slice of life. I was like, this is going to be more of my action fighting. Like, this is going to be my like fight book. It went back to slice of life.
Hey, it's working out though, man.
Like,
if it's gotta go wrong in the right way. Like heck yeah, right?
I mean, it's just how I write now. I
Yeah.
realized, and I'm happy with that.
And I think it's more of a, I think it comes back to like, do I feel bad about my own writing now? You know, like I write in a certain way, and that's not for everyone, and that's okay. You know,
Yeah.
but that's fine.
Not-
You know, just being me is fine.
Yep.
Not every book is for every person, but that we all have a lot of people who love our books, and that's what matters. Is like I write for me.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Probably
Jimmy.
good. Not every book's for every person.
It's true.
It would be
But you've
very
done this though,
boring.
like well, like I started one book in like a first person, I went to a third person, then I have you ever
I
just
did.
changed like your like what style you're writing it in? You went from a first to a third or whatever tense, and you just sort of
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I did. I typically do first just because that's what YA is. They typically like that. But I've experimented with like first person present, which was interesting, and then also third person. They're all just a lot of fun. I think it's just whatever kind of the story speaks to what it wants to be.
I think it's what happens with some of my stuff. Like I'm writing it, I'm like, this tense doesn't work for me, or this,
Mhm.
you know, this, you know, I got to write this from. I changed from third person to first person. I went from present tense to past tense. Just which is sometimes you got to figure out which is the right for that story. You know, I think maybe I got locked into one sort of first person past or whatever. You kind of get stuck into that, and you think that's all I can do. Yeah, that's all I can
I'm
write.
Like,
locked into third
yeah.
person. I can't handle first. I
Ah.
literally I read first person and I'm like,
And the other thing too is
Some people don't like that.
And I do think it though. It's like it depends on the genre though as well. Like some
Right.
genres are more accepting of certain tenses or perspectives than others. So
but also just kind of what is the genre expectation, right?
Right.
Like if you're reading in a certain genre, there's certain expectations for it, and as like even like lit RPG whatever gets larger, we do start to have different expectations because we've trained the audience in a certain way, right? And so I think that over time it's going to be harder to have first person stuff or whatever else because we're trending toward not doing that.
right.
Tao got a ton of flack for writing in first person for System Apocalypse, like a ton.
Really?
And, oh yeah, he got a lot of backlash for it, and I didn't really
That's
notice
Tao,
it
man,
as
so that's
much.
really shocking.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Are there any tropes you're curious about?
Yeah, we have had a few others come in. Like, are there any tropes you're curious about? Anything you'd like to try, haven't done before?
I have a
I
few
want to do
tropes
a
I'm making.
cultivation.
They're always again. I don't want to sound like just not a writer and just a salesperson, but a lot of the tropes are dependent on like again what the genre expects or wants. Because I have gone outside of like those tropes and they don't do as well as the ones in it. But it's always a mixture of like finding the tropes you want to do and you are passionate about with what is like going to actually the readers are going to like and finding that intersection. Because you don't want to write something that you have no interest in, obviously, but then also something that is going to sell, hopefully.
Yeah,
And
I noticed.
and that's a difficult thing. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I was just saying I have a lot of like the reincarnation trope because that's one of my like favorite tropes, and so I realized that I do it pretty much every series. Well, I've done it in both of my series so far, and I'm gonna. It's one of those tropes that I really enjoy, and so like it's a popular thing in the genre, but
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm probably having connection issues.
yeah,
too, so
and-
sorry.
Well, one of
okay.
the other things to consider too is like as the genre becomes more established, if you're outside of the tropes, what you're in is a different subgenre, right? So like if you're like, hey, I'm not using these tropes, I'm totally subverting the tropes. You're like, no, you're just writing in a different genre and you just don't know it, right? Like that's okay, but you're gonna have a harder time marketing that. You're gonna have a harder time like making sales on it as soon as it becomes known that you're not hitting the genre correctly, right?
And I think that's a struggle, like not even talking about tropes, but just like the idea of just creating a unique or original work. Like I think you absolutely should have your own personal author original take on a thing. But if you're creating a wholly unique story, you probably haven't heard of those because they don't sell. Like they're just so weird and random that like they don't fit anybody. Nobody wants them. But
Yesterday, the panel on unique magic systems was actually really good about this. And
shoot,
I mean,
missed that.
lit RPG is a really overarching genre. It can be any other genre,
Mhm.
as long as it just has game elements. And so that's why there are, there haven't been. It was one of the first of that. Or like my brother's using star maps.
You mean the Xander
Sorry.
Boyce?
My connection is really struggling right now. I apologize.
So,
The
Wait a
Xander
second.
Boyce. Oh my gosh.
You mean to tell
But
me,
like
you
all
mean
of
to
these
tell me that
things,
you
like,
guys are related?
they did things that were unique and interesting and that were like hallmarks of like a new something. And people like there wasn't a lot of slice of life when I was writing it. Now there's a lot more. Like it's just all something like that.
I got another question that did come in. That was, what's driven you in the past to write books / characters you have written about? Has there been anything that's really driven you to really want to make a certain character a certain way?
What is Jimmy in the past?
Yep. Because I haven't written that personality type yet, and I want to try it. I'm serious. So I can tell you full murder hobo type 8, right? Joe from the Completionist Chronicles is a type 7, like in terms of Enneagram stuff. And then like Cal would be a type 5, and so on and so forth. Like I just want to try all the unique different types and see how these people would survive in this type of world. And I build stuff around them for sure, but it's definitely one of those things where like I definitely say like my books are not for everyone, but if it resonates with you, it probably resonates with you really strongly because you have like high affinity with that type of personality, right? And that's often what I get is people will be like, hey, there's this, but I love this one of your books, but this one I couldn't stand. I'm like, then okay, that's fine. Like try this one because it's closer to the personality type that you originally liked, right? Yeah, and even with like the personality type that I really just don't really understand, not really good right with is like the really thinking, feeling type 4, right? So like and so I have Dennis Vanderkerken to help with that because that's like how I see like Artorian's Archives, right? As the main character is this like very loving, caring person who is very specific and just silly and funny, but I needed outside help with that one because it just does not resonate with my personality type at all, right? So luckily Dennis is amazing, so got that going.
So if I'm reading the question right, they're asking why do we write the characters that we wrote in the past?
Yeah, or have you ever just gotten a stick up your butt where you're like, I need to write a character that does this now, kind of like Dakota was talking about. I really want to try out this character quality to see how it plays out in a book. Anything like that?
I think a lot comes down to, at least for some of the books in the past, comes down to premise and then also tropes. Again, it's like there's a lot of chosen one and undiscovered power tropes in YA fantasy. And so like if a regular teenager comes across the chosen power, like this chosen power, how are they going to react? And different people are going to react differently. But then I think a lot of it is like the premise. Like if you are writing a story in a world, like a very maybe oppressive world, what kind of character is that going to create? Or like, what kind of person is going to come out of that? Maybe a person is a very feeling and thinking character, but over the course of the story, you have to like reveal that because they're so jaded and cold at the beginning. So I think there's multiple things, and just people you see in real life, I think are really interesting to write about. You take components of different people, never too close to real people, otherwise you'll lose a lot of friends.
I think mine, I actually started off with ideas. So for the Touch of Power series, I had a dream about an ability, and I went through and I said, okay, well, how would that have started? And then with Lotus Lake, I had a dream about an item that I wanted to use. And so I'm out again.
Sweet.
And my mic is muted for some reason there.
I was wondering,
yeah.
He's coming back. Totally fine.
Yeah, you touched on the evolution of the genre. You move away from the first person perspective. Where do you see this genre going? I think this is kind of a big question since we brought that up on where you might see this going in the future.
I see a nuclear arms race in the form of massive sprawling books, right? Like especially when our genre is so heavily focused in on audio and other things like that, and you're like, man, I want so much bang for my credit or my buck or whatever it is. Like, I'm seeing, like these people that can generate content, whether it's amazing content or not, as long as it is there, right? I see that being a big direction that the genre goes, right? And something to take into consideration, right? But other than that, I mean, testing new things as new types of games arrive, as new types of like things gain popularity. I think Cyberpunk 2077 had 1 million players a week, active players a week, for the first time since it started recently. And so I'm betting we're going to start seeing more things like that, just because it is more popular now. So it's going to follow social trends, really.
VR is also blowing up, like you're saying, like in the world now. I think you're going to see more people interested in sort of that. I mean, there's something on Prime coming out now. I think it was also like a virtual world type of concept.
There's an ebb and flow of VR, I think, is because there was a huge push of VR and then people were like, oh, it's overdone. And I think some of that is coming back now. I don't know. I think there's just a lot, like with the huge sprawling books, though, I think part of that comes from Royal Road and the fact that with the constant content that we had coming out with Royal Road, that was a huge thing for our fans because it keeps you relevant and keeps you in their mind when they can just read along with you instead of waiting for a book every 4 years.
So does that mean you think that that VR has maybe kind of become the isekai truck of the lit RPG world? Maybe just a little bit.
And I love the truck.
Truck
I love
is
that. I think
amazing.
it's hilarious.
Yeah, they now have tropes on the truck. It's amazing.
Oh,
Some of the
yes.
things they're doing now.
I may have used the truck. Maybe.
So, and I had a question. I've just forgotten what it was. So I'm going to go over here to some of the other ones. Somebody had a question. How do you deal with the Deus Machina in your books? Do you embrace it, avoid it, or something in between?
So Deus Ex Machina is essentially hand waving to say I win, right? And I think that's crap. I really like Sanderson's stuff, like his concepts towards making things successful, and one of the things I really agree with is the first rule of magic. Sanderson's first rule of magic is like the ability to solve any problem with magic is directly related to the reader's understanding of that magic, right? And so if you walk in and you're just like full Monty Python style, all right, the show's over, everyone stop, go back to, you're all under arrest, show's over, right? It makes for a very unsatisfying thing unless you're going for a particular type of humor, right? So if you just say, I win, people will often be like, okay, well, I read the book, but so if this is how you're going to end things, I guess that's how you'll always end things, and I'm done. I'm going to read someone else who has surprise endings and twists and interesting things, right? Because that's always the struggle, is keeping the attention on ourselves, keeping not just ourselves, but on our work, on our content, and making it resonate long enough and well enough that when you put out another book, no matter how long later it is, people will come back and read it, right? So that is one of those really difficult things, is how do I do something that has been done in a new and interesting way so that it doesn't feel like it's been done, so it's all sorts of fun things, and Dice is a great way for that, by the way, just saying. Yeah.
So, and then I guess the follow-up question on that one, do you feel like when you have gotten to the end of a book or plotted out where the chart is going, have you ever felt like sometimes maybe everybody knows so-and-so is going to win because they're the main character of the book. They're always going to get, X, Y, and Z done to whatever plot armor is going to keep them alive at the end of the book. Is there anything that you ever felt like, sometimes I just feel like maybe something really, really bad should happen just so it's not predictable, or whatever the case is, to try to find that new and non-cliche niche of
the George
good guy
Martin
always
route and just
wins.
kill off the main characters.
Yeah, well, we don't want to have the red wedding in every book either. Then it becomes the cliche. So, have you guys ever felt into like pressure to do something different or try to find some outside of the box thinking for that?
I mean, there's always the pressure to make your stuff better, right? I don't think anyone's terribly shocked by that. Yeah, we want to do better. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Especially when you start writing so many books, you can't help thinking back to other ones like, I already did this. Like, I should try something different. But obviously that gets kind of difficult. So in that way, I mean, there are certain expectations within the certain genres of it concluding in a certain way. And so if you're able to either find a different way to still come around to the inevitable end, but maybe not exactly in the way they anticipated, or make it incredibly difficult so it's not just easily tied up with a bow. I think those are two ways to like keep things fresh, even though you have to kind of end it in a certain way.
I'm gonna say, like, Chekhov's gun isn't always a best thing, but it is something that, like, if you have foreshadowing and like you build up a way to do it, that's generally better than the Deus Ex Machina. Right? I really like actually building in, like, this is going to be something, and like not just handing them a random magical sword out of nowhere at the end. Like, oh yeah, because like I've seen books where they were like, oh yeah, I got this some time ago. I forgot to mention it, but I got this, and now I'm.
All right. Oh my god, it's the worst.
It's like, did you forget to mention it, or did the author forget to mention it?
Right, exactly. Well,
I don't
one of my
know.
favorite things to do is like have them make this like super cool, intricate plan, and then it just succeeds, and no one is ever expecting that. They're like, all right, so here's the plan. Here's what we're gonna do, and then it works, and everyone's like,
that is very,
Wait,
very
a
subversive.
plan went to
exactly
plan?
right. Yeah, like
What?
planning works. This is bullcrap. This man doesn't know what he's talking about.
I almost think that creates more tension because
Never
you
been a
are
project manager.
expecting like
Something to go bad.
the
yeah.
thing to go wrong, and then it doesn't. You're like, I don't know how to feel about this actually.
Right, man. Exactly like the whole imposter syndrome. See?
Sometimes when you're writing, you try.
Sometimes it just works, man. You just got to roll with it.
Just works. Gotta roll with it. Like you
Sometimes
roll the dice on
plans-
creating your books.
I mean, we make plans to have plans. I mean, we wouldn't make them if they didn't sometimes work. Sometimes
Talk about it. Communicate.
I feel like Wilson every time this happens.
Okay, I agree with Chandler. Like, yes, Martin did like that subversive thing. He killed everybody. The only thing with that is I don't read Martin's books just because I like getting to know the character and then they die. And it's like, I'm not drawn to that, but some people absolutely love that. So, I mean, it's all about knowing your audience. He was like, I'm just going to write these books and there's a reason they're popular. He found that audience that really enjoys that.
But those deaths also drive that plot. That's why. I mean,
he does. Well, yeah,
that
exactly.
drives
He's
the
not just
plots.
doing it for like the shock value
Yeah.
either. I think that's really important. It's like, yeah, it has to have a purpose.
Like Ned Stark's death is shocking at the first season, but it drives, or at the end of the first book, but it drives the whole series.
Yeah.
So you have to have it. As much as shocking as it is.
I'd love to have seen his like editor's reaction when he turned that in. Get him a call like, George, buddy, we got to talk.
Or just like imagine he's like, hey, the next person who asks me about this character, I'm killing that character. And then like everyone's like, oh, it's this character, and he's like, fine, I'll take all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? That's how I see it in my
Was
head.
it this
I'm
one
like,
or that one? No, everyone.
Everyone dies.
Everyone
fault.
dies.
Oh.
Curses on you.
Cool.
Yeah, and of course,
Well,
there's
yeah,
always the
Ryan.
people who are just. There's also the people who are just saying they just did it for shock value.
Maybe
People
roll
just saying,
dice and they all just failed their saving throws.
Yeah, they all got critical
Everyone
fails.
failed the saving throw. Okay,
Well, I mean,
guys?
it would
It can happen.
would be for shock value, but it also like works as the story as well. So it pulls double duty. But
I mean, because when you think about it, a lot of people don't have that happen. They don't have 100 of their characters die all at the same time throughout the books, where people thought these are going to be the good guys. These are people we love. These are people we fell in love with, and people just don't do that. You don't. People say you can't kill off all these characters people will love. People won't love my stuff anymore if I do that. So it was an interesting take on that.
I killed a whole bunch of characters in my last book. They weren't
Well,
main characters, but I killed like half a city.
yes, it's a little bit different than the ones you've already got to know and love, though. It's the same. But I applaud your mass violence in your book.
your bloodlust.
I
So
mean, it
we're-
was a monster attack, a giant monster attack. They weren't prepared. People are going to die.
It's true.
You
Totally understand.
always got to
Well, we're
prepare
get-
for the monsters, for the monster attack, right?
Right. Well, we're getting down to the last few minutes here for today. I want to thank everybody thank all the panelists, especially for coming, giving us of your time. I know your time is very valuable. We appreciate you coming to be out here with us. Know that everybody that was on the call with us really appreciated that as well. But I do want to give everybody one more chance to just tell us a little bit about what you're working on. But that last little plug in people's ears so they know what to look for and go out and pick up. Evan, why don't you get us started with that?
Let's see, what do I have? The last audiobook for my current series, my completed series, Immersion Online, will be coming out in December. It was produced by Podium, so it'll be coming out then. And then I'm hoping for a whole series I'm going to rapid release in the spring. I'm working on it now. I'm a book and a half in out of a 4-book plot. I think I have to write the whole thing first, 'cause just of how I sort of crafting this. I think I need to write the entire series. To kind of get it done, make sure everything's sort of working continuity wise. So in the spring, you can look for some stuff then.
Okay. And Dakota?
Hi guys, so I'm Dakota Kraut. I have a whole bunch of books out there. If you haven't read them, that's cool, but I hope you do. I have all sorts of content coming out both from myself and from the awesome authors that are in Mountain Dale Press. So if you are looking for pretty much anything in the genre, we got it. For my personal stuff that's coming out, I had 2 books actually that came out about a month apart from each other recently. So it's book 7 and 8 in Completionist Chronicles. The next book in a series that I already have out that I'm doing is going to be the book Everything in the full Murder Hobo series. So that'll be coming out soon, TM. And and then after that, next year is going to be a huge year for releases. So check me out then. Yeah, thanks guys.
Definitely looking forward to that.
Thanks guys.
Yep, definitely.
All right, Jay, you want to give us a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm Jay Boyce. I have the Touch of Power series. I'm 4 books in on that, and there's probably going to be 1 to 3 more, depending on how long my characters like to derail me. And then I am writing book 2 of Rise of the Mystic Mage right now. So that is like book 2. You can find it on Patreon if you'd like to read ahead things. So yeah, that's me. Oh, I do have, there's an anthology coming out at some point that's going to be Kickstarted called When Swords Fall Silent. It's going to be a really fun lit RPG assassin anthology. So I have the story there.
Oh, very cool. All right, and Sean?
Hey guys, I'm Sean Fletcher. I write YA fantasy, and I've got a few series out. So if you just go to Amazon or my website, Sean Fletcher Author, and Amazon, just type in my name, all my books will pop up. I've got 1 series of Dragon Shifters that's being released right now, Legacy of Dragon series, and I've got another series that I'm kind of working on that should be coming out. The first book should be coming out early next year. But if you like, Dragon Shifters or Elementals, dark magic, all that kind of stuff, go check it out.
All right. So again, we want to thank you guys for coming out and being here. We actually have a couple more minutes still. I was expecting maybe you guys to go a little bit longer than that, but I do want to make sure you got a chance to get your plugs at the same time.
We were being concise.
We're efficient.
And I very much appreciate that. But again, wanted to give you a chance to do that, just to be sure that you got your plugs in there so somebody knows where to go pick up your stuff for. We did have somebody ask do you avoid any certain relationships or scale up those ages for those who are around and you worked with? Any kind of special relationship you're trying to avoid? We talked about the characters before and how they were. We wanted to write
Dakota avoids romance. I do too.
Yep. No sex, drugs, or swearing. That's what I do. But I try to get a ton of stuff out to schools and other places. Like I'm actually right now getting together a huge order of books for like a juvenile detention center where they have like 15 through 17-year-old boys in there, right? And like it's one thing when I can just be like, hey, like they reach out a lot of times and they'll say like, hey guys, look, my institution has this terrible need for books. We have no budget for books. We can't pay you for them. Is there any way you can send us a few books? And I'm like, yes. And I'm like, what do you would like on our catalog? They're like, what can we have that doesn't have, sex, drugs, or swearing? And I'm like I said, what on our catalog do you want? Right. And so like when I can do that, it lets us get in, it lets us get out way more. Right. So, and by the way, you'll be seeing my stuff, and then hopefully within a year or so, stuff from Mountain Dew Press in Barnes & Noble and Books A Million. So
All right.
just
That's
got
very
a cool
exciting.
distribution deal going. So
Very exciting.
yep,
Very
taking
cool.
away everything from those trad pubs.
That's the way to do it.
Go.
Right, the
We're out
power.
of time now.
All right. Well, we've hit our time there now. So thank
Oh,
you
I'm
guys
sorry.
for
Thank you,
coming in.
Ryan. Thank you,
Hey,
everyone.
thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Dude, thank you for moderating. You're awesome.
No
of
problem. I
fun.
appreciate y'all.